Hey everyone, it's Andy here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to convert Yndrasta from the Dominion box set to represent the cover art from the book. Games Workshop very kindly sent Cult Headquarters a box of Dominion, and I knew I wanted to do something with this, but I wasn't really fancying painting any of the units. Nothing really kind of grabbed me. I think like a lot of people, as soon as I saw that cover art, I was like, wow, I wish the miniature looked like that. That pose is super cool. And I thought it'd be really difficult when I saw a picture of the finished miniature online, but actually getting the sprue, I kind of looked at it and how it was built up and was like, maybe this is possible. So I'll give it a go, and if it's successful, then this would be a cool video. I'd like to say from the start that I wasn't aiming for a perfect replica of the art or a perfect conversion. My aim was to do quite an accessible conversion, so I wanted to do something that everyone could do. For example, the legs aren't exactly the same as the artwork, but to do that would have meant sculpting new toes and just kind of more work than was necessary, I think. So I wanted something that closely matched the art, but would be easy for you guys to copy, and it just gave that more dynamic pose. I think the point is the artwork is way more dynamic, and that's kind of what makes it cooler in my eyes. The first thing to do was to change the spear. So the most obvious thing is the spear is facing down as she's, thrusting it into her enemies. So first thing I did was cut this as nicely as I could close to the wrist, and I'm trying to get nice flat edges so when I turn it round it will glue on nicely. I've never actually recorded me doing any knife work before, so yeah, this was an interesting one as I'd probably hold it closer to me to be a little bit safer. I also I'm going to remove the head because that is obviously not looking like the artwork at all. I also cut the arm off at the shoulder as I wanted to reposition that. And there was a little remaining piece of shoulder that I glued into the back of the torso where it was supposed to, and then I could kind of pin that and get it in the right position. I thought I might as well start with just removing all the parts that needed to be removed, so I cut the feet away from the base. I didn't want to use the base, so I was happy using clippers to cut big chunks away and then gradually kind of trim it away until I had it flush at the foot. I also scored a line along the foot, trying to be nice and careful, but either way, just take your time to remove and not damage the feet. If you want to keep the base, then you have to be careful, but I would say it's probably easier to resculpt bits of rock on the base because it could be damaged, so just get the feet off intact, I think, and you can worry about the base later. There was a big bit of tree attached to the cloak as well, so with that I gradually trimmed away the tree and I could sand the cloak flush again. That was actually quite an easy job. With these easy build models, I tend to remove most or all of the lugs, and that makes sure we can get them really flush. The problem with these is if you don't push them together, really hard straight away, you don't get that flush fitting. If we're going to use glue, which I think all of us are, then we might as well get rid of them and then it'll be a perfect seam, or well, you'll get rid of the seam much easier. I then took a look at the legs, and these were super convenient because the one that we had to really move and have a bit of flex in the knee actually had a separate knee pad, which was just so useful. So with this, I was able to cut at the knee, trim away a little bit of excess plastic so we could pivot and have a bit more movement there, and then we could put the knee pad on after, so that was just really fantastic. With the other leg, I didn't reposition it at the knee, but later I'd sort of pivot it to have it slightly further back. This is what I was saying earlier about I'm not going to copy the artwork exactly, because if you wanted to, you'd also have to cut at the toes and reposition the feet, and I think that's more hassle than it's worth. If you wanted it to be perfect, or maybe thinking about it for Golden Demon, then yeah, I would go ahead and do this. But like I said, I was looking for a nice halfway point of making this look similar and cool, but not spending forever converting it. I also opted to change the spear out. I felt that when it was the other way and it was facing down, the kind of spearhead was really long. When you look at the artwork, the sort of shaft with the 4 spikes on is actually very short, and that's why it works. But on this, it was a really long part, and then it had that diamond shaped bit, and it was just a bit too long. I think it looked weird. So I just switched out and used one from one of the normal Stormcast models. I then very carefully, with a 1mm drill bit, just got a nice even hole going through the hand, and that way I could pin the spear and make sure it was nice and sturdy, so it would just run all the way through. Next job was working on the wings. In the artwork they're folded right back, which I think is great, but almost a bit of a shame. So I knew I needed to change the angle a little bit so she looked more like she was flying, but not as drastic as tuck completely back. I quite like having the big wings on show. On the model, they have a large bit of plastic that curls and plugs into the back of the model, and this is the bit that needed to be trimmed off. So it just goes straight from the wing across into the back. This meant I could tuck them back and have the position I wanted. Once I'd trimmed enough off, I glued these together with some super glue, and I used some accelerator so it would just stick quickly. And then if I didn't like it, it's actually very easy to break the bond when you've used super glue and accelerator as opposed to plastic glue. And then I just kind of checked against the model if I had the angle right, if I trimmed enough off, and just made sure it was going to look good basically. So because we trimmed down the wings a lot, they didn't fit into the back of the body at all basically. So I took some milliput, which is the putty of preference for me when it comes to this sort of thing. And that's because it dries much harder than green stuff. It's not going to have that little bit of flex. So I just made up a little batch of it and obviously stuffed it into the back. Then I made sure the wings were slightly wet so they wouldn't stick, and I kind of made a rough impression by just sticking that into the back of the milliput. And that was kind of my first session over, so I didn't want to continue converting this. I would just leave the milliput roughly done so the wings would fit in there, and then I would do some proper sculpting work and fix it up later on. But for now I'd kind of filled out the bulk of it, and I'd made sure the wings were going to be able to stick in the right position. I did the same for the arm, so just took a little bit of milliput and then kind of stuck it in the position I wanted, and then once that was dry I'd be able to pin it and get it in position really nicely. The left arm, I didn't want to match the art because it was kind of held in the air, and you'll see when it's finished I think it looks nicer for this composition to have it out. So all I did was trim off the little plug, and that will give me a nice platform to glue it in place and put some putty over the top. So it was kind of like a little thin bit of the arm, but I just trimmed it off so I could stick it on at the right angle. The head was obviously very different in the artwork, with the aggressive expression and the hair kind of flowing back, so I didn't think it was even worth converting the existing head. I knew I wanted to use an entirely new head. I tried out one of the Sisters of Battle ones with kind of an open screaming face, but it wasn't quite right for me. And then I kind of looked through the Games Workshop website and I picked one of the Underworld's warbands, and there was this person with the spear, and I thought that's probably the closest I'm going to get. Quite an aggressive face and the hair's flowing back, so it needs a little bit of adjustment, but yeah, I think this was the best option. So shout out to Colin's Painting Workshop. What a great dude. He sent me this head in the post so I could carry on and get this conversion done. I thought I had this model, but I couldn't find it anywhere, so thanks for sending that out to me, and that's why I've managed to get this video done. I thought I was going to have to do quite a bit of sculpting work for the hair, but actually I carefully trimmed it back with a knife, and I managed to get it kind of flowing in one direction. Again, if you want to add more hair and do some more green stuff work, then go ahead. I'm just trying to give you a rough idea of how to do this, and you can put more or less effort in if you want. I then tacked the face in place just to see what it would look like if I was on the right track, and tried out the pose of the arm as well. And at this point I was like, yeah, I'm happy with both of these things. They need some sculpting work, but these are the right parts. I went ahead and glued the legs in place. So like I said earlier, I trimmed a little bit out And now I had the cloak on the back, I kind of got the knee back as far as it would go. Again, you could reposition the cloak. Actually, that would be more realistic, like it was flowing behind her, but that's a big job, and I think that this looks absolutely okay. And like I said before, again, the toes should probably be coming back, but I think they look fine like this, and it is a lot less work. At this point, kind of tack it all together and check it against the art to see if I'm happy. And yeah, it's not exactly the same, but I think that looks pretty close, and without the artwork, that's a cool miniature. I definitely like this more dynamic look than the chilled out on rock pose. With everything looking good and in the right place, we just have to finish this now by getting some putty to fill the gaps and bulk out the chin and things like that. I'm going to use a putty called Magic Sculpt. It's my personal preference over green stuff. Green stuff's absolutely fine, so if that's what you have, then go for it. I think for armor plates and things like that, Milliput and Magic Sculpt are better, but for organic shapes like the face, then I think green stuff is nicer to use. Either way, I'm comfortable with Magic Sculpt, so this is what I go for. So I start by applying a small blob to the face with my metal sculpting tool, and just get that roughly the right shape. So I'm just looking to bulk out the jaw on this. If you use a different face, then you're not going to have to do this. But I needed a little bit of adjustment where I cut it away. I'm using one of these clay shapers, the flat chisel shape, and then with it slightly damp, I'm just trying to blend that in, get it nice and smooth to the skin. The good thing about Magic Sculpt is if it's not perfect, you can sand it after. That's the same as Milliput actually, but with green stuff, it's not really good to sand. I'd also maybe recommend having the face separate if you're new to sculpting. I was quite comfortable to do it all together, so I left it like that. I also filled out a little gap under the leg where I'd moved the thigh away from the scale mail, and this is where Magic Sculpt and Milliput are really nice because it's dead easy to get a nice flat smooth surface on something like an armor shape. So I just used the clay shaper, a little bit damp, and I'm just trying to replicate that armor shape and get it as smooth as I can. But if it's not perfect, then I can sand it and have another go. I do the same thing for the back of the feathers, and I'm not trying to re-sculpt and replicate the feather detail because I don't really have the skill for that. So I'm just going to try and blend it in nice and smoothly, and I'll just use some painting to kind of hide it and make it less obvious. If you're a great sculptor, then sculpt the feathers in by all means. But, don't worry about it too much. You can hide things with paint and kind of freehand a few feathers on, and I think it will look great. And the final job is just filling out that gap in the knee. So I still can't believe that the knee pad was separate. That was so handy and so useful. Like I said, I didn't think this conversion was going to be that easy, but there were some things, the way it was broken up, that did actually make it really pleasant to do. And here you have it. I have just blue tacked it onto a backdrop plinth from Tarot Model Maker. I'll leave a link to those as they're brilliant. And my intention was actually to sculpt and use bits from Nurgle kits to add the tentacles and everything around her from the artwork and make the full scene. I might still do that in the future, but I thought I'd rather just get this conversion out there for you guys to see, and then if I fancy that, I'll add it later. You could actually use the base she came with and maybe mount her on the tree or something to get some height. Either way, this is how I've converted her, and I think you can base her however you like. I hope you liked this video. Maybe you wanted to try this conversion but weren't too sure of how to go about it. I hope these tips have given you the confidence to give this a go if you really wanted to, and I hope you agree that I think it looks really cool. I'm not sure if and when I'll paint it, but I just really wanted to see if the conversion was possible. And also a big shout out to Henry, who's done so many amazing videos for us during a time where I've just had not as much hobby time as I wanted, so this was my contribution to the Dominion videos. But yeah, massive thanks to Henry for kind of getting all those wicked videos out. It's not a perfect match to the art, especially with the arm position, but actually I quite like it like this because you have the spear following the right wing and then the sword following the left wing. So I quite like that little compositional thing of them flowing in that direction. Either way, it was quite easy converting it in this way and not matching it perfectly. But if you have a go at this yourself and you manage to convert it more accurately, then tag us in it, because I would love to see it. And actually, if you do have a go at this conversion, of course, tag us in it. I'd love to see some people using this and having a go at themselves. And actually, I'd like to see it painted. I don't think I'll paint mine, so it'd be really cool to see this converted and painted up by some other people. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to getting back on and doing way more tutorials. I've missed doing it, I missed being on the YouTube. And until then, I will see you next time.